Oh, somebody already started the recording. It wasn't me. Someone else started
Just pause it. It starts automatically. Just pause it.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Sister Nomics Part 3 series of Economic Empowerment for Black Women. NCBW's Economic Empowerment and Development programs focus on financial literacy, family wealth building, and entrepreneurship. Our programs include comprehensive workshops and seminars that promotes economic self-sufficiency. The organization's chapters are composed of African-American women who understand the power of collaboration and the need for a commitment to service while making a difference in the communities we serve. Tonight we have with us Ms. Brittany Willis, and she will be discussing helping businesses survive COVID-19. At this time, we will move on to our first VP of programs, Retta.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. If we can also advance the slide at this time. While we are doing that, we want to say good evening and welcome to everybody on this Thursday evening. We truly appreciate you joining us this evening. I just want to share a little bit with you about our organization. The National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Inc. is a 40-year-old advocacy organization founded in 1981 with 62 chapters across the U.S. and over 3,500 members. Our mission is to advocate on behalf of Black women and girls to promote leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment. Our vision is to see Black women and girls live in a world where socioeconomic inequity does not exist. Our chapter is an award-winning chapter. The Dallas Metropolitan Chapter was started in June 2018, led by our charter president, Mia Johnson. Her vision was to be a voice in the community and address the concerns of Black women and girls in the Dallas area. 3 years later, led by our amazing president, Ms. Sonia Irby, our chapter continues to work to ensure that that vision becomes a reality for every Black girl and woman in the Metroplex. One of the ways we advocate is providing education and resources through our programming. And we cannot do what we do without the support of great partners. On a national level, our organization has strategic partnerships with the Coca-Cola Company, Major League Soccer, Walgreens, and tonight's sponsor, the Truist Foundation. We are proud to launch our fall series on economic empowerment, Sister Nomics, which is a signature program of our organization in partnership with tonight's sponsor, the Truist Foundation. The Truist Foundation is committed to Truist Financial Corporation's purpose to inspire and build better lives and communities. The Truist Foundation's grants and activities focus on leadership development, economic mobility, thriving communities, and educational equity. Sister Nomics focuses on financial literacy, family wealth building, and entrepreneurship. We are excited to provide financial literacy programming with the support of our national partnership with the Truist Foundation that speaks directly to the concerns of Black women and girls in the local Dallas area. Our desire is to not only educate, but encourage financial well-being and financial freedom to make the choices that allow for the enjoyment of life. We do appreciate you joining us tonight, and I commend you for investing in your future, in your financial future specifically. If you are watching us via Facebook Live tonight, please tag this broadcast and share with your friends. I invite you to stay connected with us and to learn more about future programming. On December 18th will be the last installment of our Sister Nomics series for this fall. That will be Economic Security for Black Women Part 4, Basic Money Management. Then on January 6th, in collaboration with Ladies in Film and Technology, we will present Bright Lights, a red carpet film screening, premiere, and panel discussion aimed at raising awareness about human trafficking. On January 18th, we invite you to join us for Strive for Life, which is our obesity awareness and nutrition program. At this time, I am going to turn it over to my coalition sister, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. And thank you.
Thank you, First Vice President. It is my honor to introduce Mrs. Brittany Willis, MBA. Brittany is an accomplished Fortune 500 business professional turned entrepreneur and small business expert. With an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and an MBA from the University of Arkansas, Brittany has accumulated over a decade of experience in business development and corporate account management, working for noteworthy companies such as Kraft Foods and PepsiCo. In these spaces, she was selected to manage some of the world's most iconic brands, leading retailers such as Amazon and Walmart. Mrs. Willis founded 828 Enterprises with a mission to inspire, empower, and facilitate entrepreneurial and professional excellence through thought leadership and individualized consulting. In February of this year, Brittany took on the daunting task of becoming a franchise owner of PJ's Coffee of New Orleans, right here in North Dallas. Her trailblazing efforts have already been featured in areas such as Forbes, Business Insider, Franchising USA, and various local outlets such as NBC DFW and WFAA. Last month, Brittany decided to share her unique talents and knowledge of navigating small business ownership during the height of COVID-19 with people just like you and me. She did this by launching her newest brand, Protege to Pro. This is a digital destination created to arm entrepreneurs and career professionals with Fortune 500 knowledge. This space is curated to provide a pathway to small business ownership through proper planning and self-evaluation. The first online course of the series is titled, So You Want to Open a Franchise. But Protege to Pro spans not only the guidance and thought leadership, it does so for people who are in franchising, but also for those people who are looking into small business management. So with all of this experience, we knew that Brittany Willis was uniquely equipped to provide us with the necessary tools to further our economic dexterity. And I'm extremely excited to hear what she has to say, and we're taking copious notes. So very honored to welcome Brittany Willis to the floor, and let's hear what she has to say.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. It was so amazing hearing more about your organization. It aligns very much with my personal tenets. A lot of the reasons why I chose to enter into entrepreneurship and remain here. I think about family legacy and all that. So kudos to each of you in this amazing organization. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I'm very excited to share my experience. So with that, let's get going. Oh, if I may please be enabled to share, I will do just that. Thank you. Okay, I'm able to share. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, ladies. So so this evening we'll be talking about business survival during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ogeti did a really great job overviewing a little bit about my background. You've heard Vanderbilt University undergrad, University of Arkansas MBA. What my most proud feature is I'm a proud New Orleans girl. So it's probably not very strange that my first franchise endeavor would be a PJ's Coffee of New Orleans, bringing a little bit of my hometown roots to Dallas. A little bit about me, and I think we probably share a lot of this. I've had a very, very robust and fulfilling career. I work with major organizations, as Ogeti mentioned, from Kraft to Care Dr. Pepper to PepsiCo, working with some of the world's leading retailers and leading brands. And as I was navigating those experiences and, having very enriching experiences, I got to the point where my why, my North Star, as I call it, started to evolve a little bit. And as I say, I went from, being driven from climbing their ladder to building my own. And here I am in front of my storefront, which opened in February of this year, PJ's Coffee of New Orleans. My umbrella brand is 828 Enterprises. And underneath that rests my franchise, PJ's Coffee of New Orleans, as well as my newest brand, Protege to Pro. And I can't emphasize enough that a lot of what gets me up at 5 o'clock in the morning, even when going to bed at midnight, is generational wealth, it's legacy, it's the ability to pass something on to those coming after me. So I really resonate with that. And what I can tell you, so what I wasn't planning is doing this during a pandemic. I can promise you that. And so that's the part that I kind of still pinch myself on periodically. Just kind of stepping back a little bit, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my background and my story as I share several survival tips for businesses during the pandemic. I think it doesn't get any more stark than this. It was actually Friday, March 13th, 2020, where I signed my franchise agreement. I had spent months, looking into different franchisors, making the decision, putting this date on the calendar. And then luck would have it that the very next day, I'm sure we all remember this weekend, the country shut down. It was very clear immediately that this was a thing. We had stay-at-home orders. You couldn't get masks from anywhere. And all of a sudden, our favorite restaurants were closed down. Whoa. I was like, what do I do? I just wrote a 5-figure check. I've been planning this for a year. What in the world do I do? Do I do anything? How do I go forward? And so I wanted to share this. We're talking about survival. It's essentially the act of enduring, continuing through extreme circumstances. That's literally what survival by definition is. And so it was really at this moment that I had to decide for myself, if I'm going to do this, how am I going to thrive in doing so? How am I going to do this in spite of the environment in front of me right now? And so I found myself asking myself 2 very simple questions with tough answers, I would say. Do I protect my investment by adapting to the current landscape? Or do I take my ball and go home? Do I decide that the environment is far too risky to proceed and forfeit the investment? I think we know what I chose here, but I at least wanted to share the questions that I asked myself at this time. And which takes me to my survival tip number 1, very simple, rooted in Darwinism 101, adapt or die. And I'll walk you through a little bit of what I was thinking. And again, this is going to be rooted in my experience, but I'm going to walk us through pieces that are transferable no matter where we are in our career, our lives, or even our own entrepreneurial endeavors. But it was at this point that I was presented with a macro environment that was completely, within 12 hours, my dream, my vision of what I was doing and how I was doing it completely changed. I had to accept this fact that I was boxed into a series of circumstances that were going to dictate how and if I was going to move forward. So it caused me to pause. I had to put off to the side everything that because when you think about small business ownership and entrepreneurship, especially as a Black woman, I take a lot of pride. I don't see a lot of people who look like us doing some of the things that we're doing. And so for me, it was emotional, right? There was a lot. It's emotional writing a check that size. It's emotional dreaming about it. And with adapting or dying, kind of sticking with this theme here, I couldn't root myself. I couldn't make decisions off of emotions. I had to make them completely in pragmatism and off of facts. I allowed myself, I kind of licked my wounds for about 2 or 3 weeks. I think the whole world stopped. If we all remember, the world stopped at that moment. And I was completely glued to TV, to the news, to local mandates, really trying to understand what was going on. If I was going to adapt, I was going to have to really take in that information. So to each of you, no matter whatever that means for us, adapting to an environments are going to look different, but you have to stop and ask yourself, what's the black and white? What do I need to take with me to make a decision that will fortify me in my next step? And so a lot of so here I am, I'm looking at the fact that I just signed a contract, right? That has happened. Water under the bridge, literally. And so the next step in this process would be finding a location. That's typically how this would go. And so enter the site selection process. So there's 2 phases. You are going to search for a site, in my case of, a franchise with a storefront. And then you're also going to formalize that with signing a lease agreement. And so for me, kind of in the site search process, typically you see franchises in commercial shopping centers, right? And you'll have kind of 2 circumstances. You'll have, those that are walk-in. And if you notice, sometimes on the ends, and they're called end caps, you have those that have drive-throughs, right? Varying restaurants, coffee shops, they're all over. And so, are you guys able to see my screen, by the way? Oh, okay. Have you been able to see it? I'm sorry. Have you been able to? Oh, perfect. It just said you could see it. Okay, great. And so when I was looking at, pre-pandemic, what is that now, right? Pre-pandemic, I was looking, okay, I'll do a walk up or a drive through. Doesn't really matter. I laugh at that now. It doesn't really matter. I'll just kind of, find a little street I like and call it a day. And I had been, as I was researching this brand and also, a customer myself, I've seen a variety of models of PJ's coffee houses. There were those like this on the screen right here that were walk-in only. And there were those that were drive-through. And like I said, I was very much open to however that worked. And I think I'll share a little bit later as to kind of the geography with which I was looking at. And as I was working with my realtor and as we were looking at potential sites, I was just completely open. It was more about just some of those other factors. But again, adapting to the environment, I said, okay, I don't know if dine-in only in this environment is going to make sense for me. That's going to hold a lot of risk. Because what did we see plastered all over the news were businesses who were forced to close, were restaurateurs. I mean, I can still feel the pit in my stomach as I was watching stories on the news and on various talk shows of restaurateurs who had been in business for 10 and 5 years who were at the risk of shuttering their doors. And so there was something about drive-through that was really fortifying for me and saying, okay, if I'm going to do this in this environment, I'm going to have to take the path as much as possible, as much as you could say doing anything in entrepreneurship is risk adverse. I'm going to have to take the path that is least risky. And so when you kind of just lay them out, you're looking at a situation where if you think about the convenience of drive-through, right? Well, drive-through does 30% more volume than walk-in cafes. That was something I knew before pre-pandemic. So as a business owner, as someone who's looking at the viability of an opportunity, that was something I knew. That was something that, I really was like, okay, that kind of gave it a win. But little did I know that it was going to go from kind of a plus up to being my line of survival, essentially. And so I'm put in a position where it's very clear. Again, we've got a situation where I'm going to be at risk of having a lease, having bills, and not being able to operate, or being in a position where I'm a drive-through and being able to sustain, and not only being able to not only being able to operate, but also delivering a model with which customers in this environment are comfortable interacting with. And so I spent 3 months, so again, taking a pause, really learning how I'm going to adapt. I spent 3 months in my geographic location of interest. My husband, God love him, we staked out morning, noon, and night, and we watched traffic. I drove to every drive-through Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts in the area and just watched, and I paid attention. So again, kind of a competitive landscape, really seeking to understand what's going on with my target market, what's happening. And I think a lot of us probably remember this. We might've been in these lines ourselves. And it wasn't just Starbucks, it was Chick-fil-A, it was Raising Cane's, it was McDonald's. In fact, their volume actually increased. In fact, it was causing traffic jams in the street. So I said, okay. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but coffee is not only a trend that is on the ascend, that is actually resonating that much more with younger generations, but now we actually have an environment where, a drive-through was actually primed to really perform well. And that was the singular. I mean, if this wasn't an option, I wouldn't be here right now. This was completely what enabled me to move forward. And there, if I'm really honest, I wanted it. I mean, I was considering drive-through, but I really liked the feel of like that niche cafe, right? You got to park your car, you walk in, you take your time. Like that was where my mind was prior to this. But like I said, just with the environment that we were in, I completely adapted to, like I said, the box I was in. If anybody who knows me, I don't like being boxed in anything. I don't think any of us do. But I really had to accept the landscape that we were in. And that goes for, and that's pandemic, but that goes for anything. There are times where shopper trends change, right? An ingredient that used to be really popular, is now all of a sudden, Dr. Oz or WebMD said it's not. And so now you got to quickly gather yourself and figure out how you're going to go from that to something else. Like these are things that are going to happen in a variety of industries in a variety of ways. Again, I'm kind of benching this in my experience in COVID-19, but I want to make sure that we're seeing the transferability. We're always going to have to adapt to macro factors. And so this was for me how I was able to do that. So undoubtedly, the winner was the drive-through. And so here I was. So this was my site on the day I signed my lease. And you can see I've got a drive-through lane. It was already erected, no signage. I was a year away almost from, from opening my doors. And so what won out for me here was drive-through. We talked about that. And also the fact that it was in the high traffic location. That was a must. Again, the entrepreneurship and going into business, especially going to a storefront during pandemic, was risky enough. So I'm looking at factors like, okay, high traffic. Well, high traffic means, you know, I'm going, you know, this is a normal commuter lane. You know, I'm gonna come in contact with X amount of cars per day. Again, just looking at the viability of it. And I'm surrounded by my target demographic. I'll go into this a little bit later, but it's very important to understand who your shopper, consumer, your target demographic is. If you were not located, including these pictures in your marketing, you know, the list goes on. If you're not speaking and heralding to your target market, whether you have a physical presence or online presence or not, we're missing the boat here. And so this is very particularly important with the storefront. You need to make sure that you're surrounded by your target demographic. So coffee shop, we'll think about colleges, check, high schools, check, businesses, check, commuters on the way to work, check. I mean, it was a slam dunk. I always say that God made it really hard for me to say no to going forward. So I'm very thankful for that. And then we move into the lease agreement. So, you know, and as we kind of talked about that, but the most important thing here is that a lease agreement is contractually binding. There is no, oops, I can't, you know, there's none of that. I can't tell my landlord, oh, you know what, I changed my mind, things have gotten too crazy, or, you know, changed my mind, you know, the county won't let me do X, or because the county won't let me do X, I can't pay. No, it is contractually binding. And these are contracts that usually last 5 to 10 years. And in the area that I am in, for the square footage that I have, at a minimum, it was in the range of $5,000 per month. So that was what I was signing myself up for, no matter what happened. So again, enter, okay, what am I going to do here? And that's going into my next phase of survival tip number 2, ironclad research. And I kind of gave you a little bit of tidbits along the way, but we'll dive a little bit more. Doing your research, when it comes to especially navigating a pandemic, and we can almost say the pandemic is synonymous with just entrepreneurship risk. It's risky, period. The pandemic just spiced it up a little bit, but it was risky, period. And so when it comes to research, especially for my location, I did a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal factors, looking kind of inwardly at, you know, your organization and kind of what you have going on, and opportunities and threats are external. So that macro environment around you. And so this is something I'll spend some time on. This is something I put together. We're looking at a little bit of an artifact. So this was from probably May of 2020, May or June of 2020, before I signed my lease. And so what we see in the yellow triangles are businesses, okay? What is actually in green is a Starbucks. It was very important for me to understand where the nearest Starbucks was. Like, you know, and you can kind of see I'm about 1.5 miles from one on one corridor at that upper portion. And then there's one all the way to the right, a little further away. So I said, okay, when it comes to that guy, I feel good about that. I feel good about my distance in kind of the ownership of the space that this white space I'm going to have here. But then you also see that there's two other coffee shops, right? There's one that was once called 84 Point Cafe, and there's one called Native Coffee. Those are also, like, one's a little off the beaten path, so I wasn't too concerned about that. And the other one was still in between myself and Starbucks. But what was my point of difference? My drive-through. Drive-through is so convenient. And so, you know, I mean, I was actually in my store this morning. I mean, we had a line out into the parking lot. Like, even though coming in would be so much faster, people want to be in the car. And so it was that drive-through. It was the proximity to colleges and schools and businesses. And where I have major thoroughfares. So Midway is a major road, and people are driving. I'm on the AM side, as you call it. So people are driving southbound to 635. So when I was just looking at all of this competitive area review, I'm looking at the threats that I have against me, and I'm looking at the positives that are coming my way. Again, things were just stepping up to saying, okay, this is a viable opportunity. Again, did my research within both myself and the competitive environment surrounding me. just diving in a little bit more and kind of really walking the SWOT analysis that I did for myself. The strength that I have, and I'll walk through this later too, was the PJ's brand, an amazing brand. If you haven't had it, I hope to see you soon. It was a white space geographic area. I know I had things on that slide, but if you looked at the area I was in, I mean, if you just kind of went several miles out in the radius, there was not another coffee drive-through. I said, okay, cool. The drive-through, of course, that's the unsung hero. And then favorable terms. So we were in a pandemic. One of the things that I've learned in my corporate background is how to negotiate. And so I knew that I had the leverage, because guess what was happening at that time? Or guess what wasn't happening? People weren't jumping to sign leases at this time. And so as a business owner, you've got to be able to understand when you have leverage to negotiate. And I'm in this contract for 5 to 10 years. So me negotiating favorable terms at this point in time benefits my business and my bottom line for 5 to 10 years from now. And so I really took, not only was taking my time, a part of me just researching and developing the comfort to really lock myself into major agreements that have major implications. It was also about setting myself up to enable myself to have favorable terms from a financial standpoint. And we'll talk about some of that a little bit later as well. From a weakness standpoint, the one thing that concerned me was the fact that in the commercial center that I was in, they had business turnover. There was a business that had already closed down because of COVID. I was like, whoa. And I asked about, just who had been in that shopping center over the past 5 years, and I saw some turnover. So I was concerned. I said, I said, okay, I mean, it's not necessarily a slam dunk just because it's a great location. And that's my point. It's not just a great location. You have to have a great product. So I'll kind of take a step back away from my franchise, and I'll say, for anyone that might be competing online or selling something online, or, any other product you have, it's not just enough to maybe have it offered on Shopify or Etsy or on Amazon. That's just not enough. Those are all amazing platforms. But what are you doing for your brand and your product and your offering or your service that's allowing it to thrive where you have it? So I'll say that. From an external perspective, you've got, the opportunities and threats. So the opportunities were, again, I'm in a high growth area. So the area I'm in not only is highly populated, but it's growing, and that's awesome. Make commuters. There is major traffic on both sides of the street at all times of day. Schools, businesses, I have an asterisk on businesses because that actually opens me up it's an opportunity for the future to cater. I'm a coffee shop. I have coffee, I have pastries, I have sandwiches, the list goes on. And so not only am I going to benefit from the businesses, from those who are meeting or, getting coffee on the way, but I have the opportunity to make them customers outside of that occasion as well. And also, let's be real, the state of Texas. I have friends in other states who were business owners who, for example, were not able to operate because of because of how their state, was the decisions they were making, the laws they were passing at this time. But Texas remained fairly favorable to business owners. So that was something else that was absolutely an opportunity that I was able to benefit from as well. And lastly, the threats as I walked through were those nearby competitors. Like I said, I was definitely, right around other coffee shops, but doing that thorough analysis, it allowed me to not preclude myself from being scared from proceeding nonetheless. So getting to the brand, as I mentioned, that's very important. So New Orleans girl, I have been drinking PJs. It's so crazy to say this, but it's true, for more than 20 years. That's crazy. And so one of the things that I looked at a variety of franchises over the years before I pulled the plug here. And I think the part that I think was divinely kind of ordained here was that I knew PJs backwards and forwards. I knew that brand. I knew that Dallas had to have it. I knew they would love it. And given the fact that there's a lot of Louisiana transients here, I also knew that I had a little bit, when you're entering into a new space, you have to gain brand recognition. But I knew that I'd have a little bit of a leg up for those who were already familiar with it. So some of the things you want to ask yourself when whether you're a new entrant or not is just really, is your chosen industry viable? So let's just say you love Polaroids. Let's just say that. That's great. That's great, honey. Love Polaroids, but I don't know if the world's still on the Polaroid train. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just something you really want to think about, because that might be something that you might have to approach your passion to monetize Polaroids, for example, into something that's a little more niche and that really makes sense. So the question to ask yourself is it viable, and is the industry growing or declining? And then how are you going to kind of, again, adapt to that? But if for a franchising perspective, or just kind of any type of brand or product or service you'd be launching, it's very important you understand your industry and you understand where it's going. As you kind of see on this page here, all signs point to the fact that coffee is here to stay. It's a growing, part of people's day. And the most important factor is you want to look at the youngest generation to see how it's resonating with them. And the fact that their heavy consumers said, okay, again, this 5 to 10 year lease I think I got some runway there. So again, that's also me looking at the risk and looking at, that longer term viability. And then again, just, the product and the brand quality. Again, I'm in a competitive coffee area, right? So it's really about my product offerings. And not only that, but the quality. So you want to offer an array of products, but you want to offer a really good product. And so, our coffee is second to none. Our coffee, I won't speak disparagingly about anybody, it would be nice, but our coffee is really good. And so, I've had coffee all over the world, and anytime I would go home to New Orleans, PJ's would be one of my first 3 stops because I just had to have it. But above all, you probably see it. The most heralded one is beignets, and you best believe when I had beignets added to my menu, I marketed that like nobody's business, because that's a draw. That's a draw. It's a novelty. It's something almost no one else in the Metroplex really can is doing it, especially the way we're doing it. But we'll talk about that a little later too. But in the vein of research, it's making sure that you understand, is this going to resonate with the end consumer or not? And then of course, it was paramount that I stayed up to date on current events and on news. And so I was, as I mentioned, constantly watching the news, constantly watching what the CDC was recommending. So I'm a new business launching during a pandemic. The one thing you don't want is people saying your business is dirty, not clean, not sanitized, your team's not washing their hands. That is a death sentence. So, I had sanitizing towers everywhere and mask sign. You name it. Everything the CDC was recommending that we were doing to make sure that we didn't have any issues with, a perception of uncleanliness or, anything like that. And then furthest on the right is just, again, staying in tune with what's happening nationally and locally. There have been several counties, so we're in Dallas County. There have been several county mandates that have ebbed and flowed and competed with Abbott along the way, but our local judges have won, that I have had to, as a business owner, I've had to stay in tune with. And again, I just, and this is just the pandemic, but kind of taking a step out and talking more generally, contingent upon maybe an ingredient you might need for your, or material you may need for something that you may have or a service, you also want to make sure that you're constantly staying up to date as to what, any municipality is saying or anything that's going on from either taxation, importing, all of that. You want to make sure you're keeping up, because it can impact not only availability, but pricing as well. The list goes on. So was definitely making sure to keep my ear to the streets on just all the macro factors I was dealing with, so I could get my ducks in a row and react. Okay, so survival tip number 3, go digital. This may seem like a duh, right? I think a lot of the world is digitizing and getting online and social, but when you think about how small businesses typically, interact with their consumers, you see a lot of pop-ups, a lot of, conventions, kind of, person to person. I know for me, when I was planning to launch, I already asked corporate if I could borrow the cup costume, because I wanted to run in not me, but I wanted someone to run in every race that we had here in the PJ's Purple Cup, because that's how I was going to get awareness. Yeah, no, not in the pandemic. That wasn't happening in the pandemic. Like those avenues with which small businesses usually thrive and ingratiate their customers weren't available to me. I had to do everything digital, which was not my vision. I was going to be at my store handing out things, but again, what were we not doing? We weren't taking paper from strangers. We weren't doing any of that. So I really had to double down in the digital space. So that was Facebook ads, it was Instagram and Google ads. And each of these have their own unique purpose for me. So just kind of diving into Facebook ads. Facebook Facebook ads are so powerful. So if any of you ladies are not utilizing it, I recommend you do it yesterday. It's economical. You can spend $5 a day and touch a lot of people. From a local store marketing perspective, it was allowing me to target the people who were more than likely going to be my customers. So if you see here, I've got my zip code, North Dallas. I'm doing 8 miles out, so an 8-mile radius from my store. I don't have any age limitations, all genders, but I am targeting people. I'm targeting moms. I'm targeting people who like coffee houses, desserts, dating. Because what's a great first date but a coffee shop? I actually get a lot of those. People will call and ask if we're open because they have a date. It's so cute. But anyway, I digress. Working from home, a lot of people are looking to get out of their home, right now. So, behaviors, commuters, again, I mentioned I'm on that side of the street where people are going southbound. So doing my research, again, we talked about that. Did my research, looking at my target market, and now I'm funneling this down into who I'm targeting in this area. So if you're in an 8-mile radius, I'd be surprised if you haven't seen it. But for $5 or $10 a day, 2,000 people are seeing my ads. That's not too bad. And I can tell you, I have seen the impact of when I have my ads on, off, change the investment, list goes on. And I can also tell some of the ways that I will do certain calls to actions to see how much my ads are resonating. Because obviously, if you saw this ad or if you asking for this product, you saw it in the ad. So those are kind of things I do too, just to kind of get a feel for it. But just to show you a little bit about kind of how I'm executing these, my awareness tactic here is spotlighting a differentiated product offering, my beignets. There's a lot of different things that I've had in my back pocket to kind of help my success. My drive-through was one. Beignets is actually another. I had a huge beignet launch, and it's still a very popular item. And think about it. More than likely, someone's not just coming to they're not going to just get beignets, they're going to get a cup of coffee. So now I've got 2 units on a ticket, and more than likely I've got a repeat customer and someone who's also going to bring someone else back. So just looking at the long scheme of it, I actually wasn't planning on executing beignets this year, but it was a product offering that our franchisor allows us to kind of bring on at our own rate. But I decided to go ahead and launch it earlier than I had planned, again, adapting, because I knew it was going to do exactly what it's done. So these are the ads that I had running initially and that I pulse out occasionally as well. The next ad that I have out every now and again, or one like it, is one that talks about product variety and appetite appeal. I don't know about you, but I want to eat that whipped cream right now. And so it's just about, having something that's appealing and allowing people to get a feel for what your products are at the same time. And then lastly, I'm a storefront, and I think, again, also differentiating, but ensuring that I'm also showing just what we look like. Somebody who's never been, I'm brand new. I can't tell, I'm still shocked, frankly, that we see about 220 customers a day. And I am still shocked of how many people say it's their first time. It blows my mind that we're still interacting with so many new people. And so because I know that, I wanted to have an ad that showcased just, I think it's gorgeous. I personally do, So I want to showcase, what the interior looks like. So if someone's looking for a date or maybe looking for a meeting spot or, whatever it may be, that they know kind of, what to expect. So those are the 3 ads that I think I like the most. I want to showcase with you all as it relates to leveraging digital to grow my awareness in the pandemic. Instagram is also an amazing platform. I think Instagram it's known to be, I think, a little more social than what it offers to business owners as well. It allows you the chance to engage with your audience. There is almost no platform that really does it like that. Yes, you've got TikTok. Yes, you've got Facebook, but there's something about Instagram that, and the way that we've socialized it, where, brands, whether it's people or actual products, can engage with customers. And so I engage with them in a way that also showcases my offering. So again, appetite appeal, a variety of food. When I did, it was a lot of fun. So I teased beignets for a while. It was the funniest thing to see, actually. And then I think I had been promoting that I was launching them on a Friday, and on Thursday I launched with the surprise. Honey, we almost sold out. Like it was just so much fun to do that and to delight my customer base like that. And because I have a curated account, I think we have 2,200 followers. Most of them are local. You know, it's because I interact, and it's not as Brittany, it's just the account, but because I'm interacting with them and kind of giving them those treats, they engage back, and it allows me to have very successful product launches. So for you, imagine what you could do by building a base where you're engaging and you're able to capture someone's attention so much when you have a major launch. And then of course, giveaways. Giveaways was one of the best ways that I grew my following, and that I told Dallas that I was coming. So what I had done, this is just an example, and I'm gonna check the chat. I see some chats in here. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. What made you decide to take the leap? I will answer that question, Tanzania. I will. And thank you so much, Kimberly. Perfect. I will answer that question for sure. So what I had done, so I opened in February. Starting in November, I had started, hey, tag a friend to get a $5 gift card, tag a friend to get a tumbler, you know, a drinky thing, tag a friend to get a search. Hey, if you're from Louisiana, what high school did you go to? Like just like it was a swell, just building the anticipation the whole way. And again, I didn't plan on doing it like that before the pandemic, but I said, you know what, I'm gonna take all the resources that the internet has for me and I'm gonna knock these out the park. And so this is just an example here of what I did with beignets, for example. So you can see, I think it has 200 likes and it had half that many comments, and you can see people are adding other people. So you've got a person engaging and now bringing someone else into it. So for every like or engagement you see, you can double or triple that. Like that's awareness, guys. That's awareness. As using digital to grow your brand. And for me, again, it was mitigating my risk, because as much as I drive awareness, I'm mitigating risk of, you know, this something, you know, maybe this not faring well, right? And so I have the vision, the vision of the caption I wrote, and you can kind of see here, you've been asking, yada, yada, if you know what this treat, and just being fun. Like I literally didn't say what it was. I was like, if you know what the treat is, put it in there. And so people were misspelling beignet and all of that and tagging their friend. It was just a lot of fun. So these are just really small, fun ways to engage with your audience. And for me, it's local. These are the people who know where the store is. They interact with the store. When I do new product launches, I think I mentioned just yesterday, we have king cakes coming. I was shocked at how many comments and likes that I have. People are paying attention. And when you engage with them and you delight them, you're going to get the reward. Okay, and Google Ads is another one of my favorites. So Google Ads allows you to target specific search keywords. So coffee shop near me. That's the one for me, coffee shop near me. You know, it helps people find you. For storefronts, someone can be on their phone in Google and they'll type in coffee shop near me. And because of my investment that I'm putting, they're going to more times out of 10, contingent upon what my bid is, they're going to see my shop. And I actually hear that a lot. I'll ask people, hey, how'd you find us? Because I want to know if my investment's working. And they'll say, oh, I just typed in da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, good to know. Because it's an investment. Google Ads is actually pretty expensive. But it's a good investment, because, and I'll tell you this, if I'm not investing, guess who is? My competitor. So it's an expense that I don't necessarily always I have an always on Google Ads strategy, which means I don't turn it off. Sometimes I adjust my spend rate, and I'll show you in a second what happens when I do that. But if I don't have it on, my competitor does. So it's kind of just, again, I'm still brand new-ish. I'm still growing awareness. So it's something that, you know, it's a worthwhile investment at this point. Because again, going digital is one of the sole ways outside of my storefront that I have to really market myself. And so what we see here, so if you look at the first arrow, that was right around when my beignets launched. So I actually there were some ads going that weren't really a surprise there, but you notice there was a downward trend. So I said, okay, let me boost my spend again. And you can see I'm getting more impressions. So I go from about 800 views a day to now 1,600, double of what I was getting. So again, that spend is working, right? And then we have a scenario where just recently, actually, as of like 2 days ago, I had noticed that I had gone back down to 800 again. And I said, let me blow this budget out the park. Like, let me just put an obscene number and see what happens. 3,200, like almost overnight. Like, wow. Like, this is like, you guys, ladies, like, this is literally the type of levers that you can pull, you know, and contingent upon your product and your offering, you know, we can talk more about that. But these are the type of things, the type of impact that you can have with your business, with these type of resources. And so it's interesting sometimes where, like, I had one of my busiest sales day today. I usually don't do the numbers I did today. And I'm almost certain it was because of the investment I'm putting into Google Ads. So just an example there. Okay, I'm gonna pause for, okay, questions. Okay, have you noticed any downsides to digital advertising? Downsides. I think the downsides I would say is, like, for example, if I'm marketing a product that we run out of, people are mad. You know, why are you promoting that? And actually what happens is we promoted it so much that we've sold out. And then we're dealing with the time where, you know, supply and freight and transportation are really challenged right now. So sometimes even with the best of intentions, we're not getting it. And I can say sometimes too, like, in a great question, Joycelyn, because I would say, you got to make sure that you're monitoring your spend and am I getting the results that I'm looking for, which actually is great for the section I'm in right now. And so that's the financial management. But it's really about, like, don't just keep it on, because something like Google Ads is expensive. And if you keep, even Facebook ads can add up. So you just want to make sure that you're monitoring, and really you should, no matter what you're doing as a business owner, professional, you should always be asking yourself, am I getting the desired results? Does the franchise provide extra digital or advertising support? Is it all on you? Great question. They actually don't provide as much as I would like to see, honestly, and I've told them that, because they pioneered a market. So we were, the 5 of us who were in Dallas, we are all brand new to the Metroplex in the last, like, not even year. And so I would have expected the franchisor to do more of a, not national, but a regionalized approach to help us market our stores. So I would say, I don't know what they're doing, but I was in a pandemic, girlfriend, and I was like, I'm going to market my store like no one's business. So that's where all these tactics came in that I was doing regardless of what they were doing. It wasn't sufficient for me, I will say that. And then another, oh gosh, okay. Oh, good questions. Okay, so we've got what made you leap to leave corporate and open a franchise? And to Sharonda's question is, how are you managing corporate America and owning your own franchise? What would you recommend to interested parties who don't feel they have time to invest? I'm not gonna lie, it's a struggle. It is a struggle. If I didn't have my husband, actually my husband and I are opening my store tomorrow morning because we're dealing with a labor shortage, and it's not just me, it's the entire industry. And it's really the fact that the labor industry is as strained as it is, that it really pulls me in more than I intended. I intended for this to be something that was passive, which I can laugh at right now. So it's everything but that. I think the benefit is that it is a coffee shop. So the days that I am there, because I have to be there, I'm there from 5:30 to 9. And guess what? I'm going either to my office at the store, I'm coming back home, and I'm turning on my Pepsi hat. So that has been it's been excruciating at times, if I'm very honest. There are times where I wish I could pick up my store and throw it out, but I'm not going to because I'm going to get through this season. But I just want to be very transparent about that for anyone who is thinking about franchising. I think that the fact that you need employees to be there for your business to thrive, you need to depend on them. You need them to be there when they say they're going to be there. I've never felt more vulnerable in my life. But I'm a spiritual person. I pray every day, and I just ask for the strength. Literally, I have my sisters will come up, you name it. So I'm making it happen in that sense. And I want to address one more question. What made you take the leap to leave? So I have not left, but in terms of opening a franchise, just again, as I would say that it really came down. I was driving on the Dallas North Tollway South one day, and I was just like, God, I don't like what I'm doing. And I was like, well, wait a minute, that's not right. Like, I love this stuff. Hopefully you guys can tell. Like, I love business. I love this stuff. It's a lot of fun for me. But my why changed. I didn't like doing it for somebody else anymore. I wanted to put those 50, 60 hours into something that was mine. So like I mentioned earlier, like when I am getting up and working 4 hours and then going to my 9 to 5, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about generational wealth. I'm thinking about, Black entrepreneurship. I'm thinking about that Black little girl who told me, Mommy, I want to own a coffee shop one day too. Like, that's why I do this. And that's why I keep it going. Has your customer base expanded beyond New Orleans? I love PJ's Coffee. Oh, cool. Oh yeah, I think most of our customers are local now. I mean, by far, most of them. I love having the headset on. I can hear the accent. I love when I hear that, but most of them are definitely very local. So thank you guys for letting me digress a little bit, and great questions. And we can definitely tackle more at the end as well. So thank you. So of course, survival tip number 4, of course, we're talking money and financial management. So rock solid financial management. It is the first thing that I talk to any prospective client about, or any client about. I actually, anytime I have a initial consultations session, we rarely ever hit on what people think they were going to hit on, because honey, we got to talk about this first. We need to talk about your personal net worth, you know, what is your risk? Like, what's going on here, like that. And I think that's something that people can often forget. I think that all of this is for naught if you are not managing your finances and you're not projecting out, you're not looking at, you're not evaluating. So kind of just jumping off, talking about personal net worth, all business owners, small business owners, okay, or people really too, should all know their net worth, like point blank period, at the end of the day. Reason being is because at some point at the beginning of your journey, or even throughout, you're going to be contributing to your business without a doubt. You know, and as it relates to mitigating risk, it's also important to understand where your assets and liabilities are, to also understand what liquidity you have to mitigate risk. There have been times, and we'll talk about this, there have been times where, you know, I've been surprised by certain things, and I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm like, okay, you know, let me go ahead and take this and move this here, and okay, we're good. But it's because I know my financial portfolio. I know what capacity I have as a business owner within, you know, the first year to invest in my business and protect my business and insulate my business. That has enabled me to do that. And also scaling. So for example, I think you guys, I mentioned that I wasn't planning on doing beignets this year. Well, but beignets was an expense. I had to rewire my store. I had to get the equipment. I wasn't planning on doing that at that time. But again, I said, this expense is worth the return. So let me go ahead and scale, and let me go ahead and do that now. And again, it was my ability, me being lockstep with my own personal net worth, and thus my ability as the owner to invest in my business, that enabled me to, you know, to go ahead and do that. So this visibility is so important. Anytime I talk to anybody about anything business related, we start here, because you need to know this. Because I also tell you this too, if you're looking at potential investors, grants, and especially loans, this is where they're starting. And so you don't want to get into a situation where you have already, let's just say you're interested in franchising, you've already invested the 5-figure investment, and you are there's a potential that maybe you're not, from a bank's perspective, credit worthy. We got an issue now. So you want to make sure you understand this immediately, so that you really understand, you know, what options you have available to you. And I'll also say too, it's also very illuminating. In my husband and I doing this, we were like, let's pay all this off so we don't have that. Like, that was actually really nice too. So when the bank was looking at me and assessing my credit worthiness, they actually were like, you know what, it's good that you don't have XX in this, and yada, yada. Like, those were things that were looked upon very favorably for us. Okay. So a couple other things. So planning your projections annually and 3 months ahead. This is critical. So obviously, when you're planning 12 months out, you're doing the best you can with the information you know today. Well, 12 months is really far away from now, right? So you do the best you can, but that's also why I recommend planning 3 months ahead. So every month, I'm planned out to the end of February right now. I'm looking at my current run rates. I'm looking at seasonality. I'm looking at the promotions that are coming up. The fact I'm actually going to be on the front page of ad pages next month. I'm looking at those things. And I'm saying, okay, what type of revenue am I gonna generate? You know, how can I take us from this to this, things like that. So a resource that I offer to clients is something like this, but it's kind of just a pro forma. It's something that allows you, it's kind of the foundation of your sales forecast. So you can kind of cast it out over a year. It allows you to control expenses, because you can see it. Like, when you put pen to paper, it's a whole different story sometimes. So this is actually really helpful here. It allows you to evaluate your profitability. So once you kind of have, you know, your net sales, your cost of goods, your operating expenses, now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of what's actually left. And that can sometimes surprise people. And then also the ability to determine your monthly cash flow needs. And we'll talk about this in a second, but just because you're bringing in $50,000 a month and your expenses are only 40, doesn't mean that you might not get hit with a bill that's 8 and your cash on hand might be 3. So you really want to make sure that you're aware of where that cash is hitting to account for the expenses that you have, which takes me to the next part, is monitoring your cash flow at least weekly. I do it every day. Are y'all surprised by that? Probably not. I do it every day. I have a file, I have a form. I'm looking at my expenses maniacally. As it talks about, so this is, again, surviving during the pandemic, but surviving period. It's know your business inside and out. And so I don't know if I have it here. Do I have it here? I don't think I do. I don't. So I have a tracker that I look at it every day. I have it day by day. I have my projections day by day. I have what my sales actually came in at, and I'm kind of shifting things around to manage my cash. So there might be a situation where I say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pay this on this day. Okay. But because I'm looking at it every day, I'm preventing myself from an innocent snafu of, oops, had that hit that day, I would have been under, right? Like I'm doing that because I'm managing where my cash is going. So I think that it's something that's probably one of the most important parts of financial management that I think often don't get talked about enough, because the cash is what's coming in and out. Like I said, like end of the day, I was with my accountant, 2 weeks ago. Everything's great, yay. But you don't always see it the way it ends up at the end of the month. What happens throughout the month is what you want to manage for. I see a chat question. How did you decide for deciding LLC or sole proprietorship? So LLC was all about protecting myself, insulating me as the person, especially with having a storefront and all that. It was very important to me to make sure that my company was its own entity that was separate from me. And I actually went a step further just in case, but I went a step further and I also got umbrella insurance on my person, just in case, like anybody, something ever did happen. Let's just say something happens and someone knows that I own the PJs on Midway and they're trying to take advantage of me. Well, now I have extra coverage. So I was not playing around with ensuring that, I was as separated, from that as possible. Even with the best of intentions, things happen, right? Things happen, something, you name it. So it was really about me making sure I think when you think about like, especially LLC versus DBA or something like that, I would say DBA and sole proprietorships, those are kind of more about having the permission to do business. Right? Okay, good, great. LLC is permission to do business plus the liability protection. So I would always recommend like considering that just at a minimum, because especially it also depends on how exposed you are. I mean, if you're selling pencils, very limited risk. Again, storefront, 200 people every day, food, COVID. I need to be protected. So that's where that came from. Great question. And then lastly, or not lastly, but for this case, engaging with a financial expert. So I think a lot of people, there's QuickBooks. That's great. Some people maybe only have someone do their books. All of that's fine and good, especially if QuickBooks is a great resource, it's economical, but at least once a year during tax time, at least engage with a financial expert to make sure that, for example, are you missing a deduction? Is there something you could have been doing along the way throughout the year to save you money or qualify you for other deductions? So that's something else that I think, unless you are a financial expert, then engage with yourself. I think that works. But I have an accountant that they manage my entire everything. I just sign things. But I do my payroll. But aside from that, I have them do everything, because for me, I want, given the magnitude of the money that I have coming through, I wasn't playing with Uncle Sam. I wasn't doing any of that. So for me, I lean in a little heavier than, some businesses may need to with financial experts. But again, just please, please, please do the investment. My attorney always says, sometimes, you want to pay the money that might seem like a lot now to save yourself way more later. So just kind of consider that too. And I see a question. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, yay. Okay. And then winding down, and we talked about this, it just constantly evaluating. Again, are you making money? Continuously evaluating profitability. Again, like it can be easy to kind of like, hey, again, get caught up on sales. I sold. You could sell, I don't know, $6,000 of product, but it cost you $8,000. But that 8 was spread out over months. So you don't remember it or you don't see it, but you remember that 6. So you really want to make sure, again, bookkeeping, looking at your numbers, evaluating if you're making money or not. Especially, I know a couple of ladies asked me some questions about leaving and transitioning corporate. A lot of what I'm looking at is, am I making money because I have other dreams and goals I want to realize? And well, require making money. So, being in tune with your profitability is really important. And it also ties into the viability of your business as well. And then we talk about this too, but are you achieving your goals? Whatever your goals are, whether it's for me, some days I tell my team, I want to sell this many of this item. I want us to do an average of this per day, which means everyone needs to be selling 2 items, things like that. But as you're looking at your goals in terms of your financial statements, do you need to grow sales or cut expenses? Because sometimes it's not both. Sometimes one or the other. Sometimes maybe there's something that you're investing in that's not a gotta have, for example. And sometimes it's just a matter of maybe pushing 2 more things a day to make a difference. And so that's where just evaluating your profitability and whether or not you're hitting your goals can do for you. And then my last survival tip, your why. Someone asked me a really great question, and I hope you felt my honesty. With how hard this has been, when I want to pick up that storefront and throw it, literally, this is what grounds me. A lot of what your organization stands for, I share. This grounds me. Again, like I said, I have had some amazing encounters. I have people that it's just crazy. I've had people who, I've not even intentionally encouraged to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, okay, this is why. And I'm telling you, if they can do it, if Mr. McDonald can do it, well, Brittany Willis can do it too. And so, I think we're in a time right now where a lot of us are asking ourselves, are looking at purpose, looking at why. We're in the Great Resignation. There's a lot of people looking at purpose and evaluating their why. What am I really doing this for? And really making bold steps and changes along the way. And I can say that, going a bit more as any small business owner knows, you wear a million hats at the same time. You're all these things. You are all these things all the time. And this is what my everyday looks like, from in my dreams to 5 to every day, all day. This is a lot. It's daunting. And I remind myself every day that I was built for this, 100%. Like I shared earlier, when I was thinking about that time I was on the road, and I was, I've always worked very hard. I worked very hard. I produced results, and I got to the point where I was saying, okay, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it for myself. Well, I am now. I am. And I have to continue to remind myself of that, because if you're not protecting your mind, body, and spirit, then there is no survival if the owner doesn't survive. So the most important thing is that you're taking care of yourself. And a lot of that is really centered around ensuring why you're doing this in the first place. It's not going to be easy. I've never worked this hard in my life, not even close. And I've been amazed. I think working for yourself, gives you autonomy. And I think that's the part that people like a lot, but it also, it's grueling, but very rewarding. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't offer this final survival tip, because it literally is what's going to propel you to survive. And it's going to push you through really tough times, like navigating a pandemic successfully. So tonight, just wrapping us up. So we have discussed 5 things, giving you 5 tips. Okay, adapting or die. Again, no matter what we're faced, personal, business, we're going to be hit. There's going to be a lion facing us one day, and we got to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And I hope that all of us choose to adapt. And I think there are times where, I hate the word die, but there are times where sometimes the answer might be to exit stage left, and that's okay too. But as long as we're just taking that moment for ourselves and making a choice rooted in an assessment, that's the way to go. Research. I talk about this all the time, whether you are a startup, pandemic or not, whatever it is, research. Make sure you understand your target market, the competitive landscape, so you are making the right decisions as it relates to how you're building your brand, your product, your marketing, the list goes on and on. Going digital was something that was really, really necessitated in the environment where that's really all we had left. But even outside of the pandemic, especially given the pandemic, we are more digital than ever. And so now is the time to make sure that we are really doubling down and understanding there's a myriad of resources out there. But I shared just a few: Facebook ads, Instagram, engaging with your audiences, and Google ads. Amazing resources. As you do some test and learns, engage with them. Don't just spend it. Take a second, evaluate if it's driving the objective that you're looking for it to drive. Our fourth was obviously, the financial management piece. Again, it's very important. All this is all fine and good, but there's no business unless, we can keep the lights on and we can keep, bringing product in. So you're never too busy to know your financials, to know your net income, your profitability. You are never, never, never too busy. This is what it's about. Don't be splitting hairs, night and day around something that is in the red. That's not, and more than likely, if it's your passion and if your goal, and if you've done these things above here, it is viable. So let's just make sure we're evaluating what we need to do to make sure there's financial viability. And then lastly, know your why. Know your why. This has been the longest year of my life. And, knowing my why has been almost exclusively how I have continued to endure it. So it has been a complete pleasure sharing this with you all. I really hope you all were able to take away great knowledge from this. And I will definitely, I'm open to any questions. I think if we have time, I don't even know what time it is, but if we have time, I'll open any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Willis. I think we have about maybe 10 or 15 minutes for questions. I don't believe any questions were omitted in the chat, but I did receive some questions offline.
Okay.
There was one question that was posed. You did mention, like, during the pandemic, you had to get really creative as far as, who your go-tos were as far as networking and being almost totally in a digital, you mentioned a lot and emphasized a lot on digital world. Were there any other outlets that, in terms of creativity, in terms of how you survived and your business continued to be successful during the pandemic?
In a creative standpoint or just outside of that?
Just outside of digital, how,
I guess. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're new to a city, like someone who may be new to this market. Like you said, there was some people who've never entered this arena before. They may be new to Dallas. They don't necessarily have the clientele and networks or the go-tos. So what did you do?
Yeah, professional organizations, so I got involved in local Rotary, building relationships. So it depends on, for me, it's a storefront, right? So I have a clear kind of stake in the ground of what my community is. So building relationships with the schools, being very, actually, I'm glad you asked, I sent letters to the schools introducing myself, letting them know that, my space was a space where I welcomed their students. I wanted to talk more about student discounts and things like that. Other organizations, like sort of Rotary, I sit on the board of the Water Tower Theater. I was in the chamber. I cannot recommend a chamber enough. The chamber actually led my grand opening, and it was an amazing event because of their marketing and their networking. So whether it's I would recommend Dallas Black Chamber, no matter where we are in the Metroplex. And then I would also find a local chamber in your kind of local area. There's so many. So in your local area, because you are going to be immediately immersed with other professionals, other community members who are invested in your business. That is the purpose of the chamber. The purpose of the chamber is to invest into buoy and to help with success with business owners. And so the chambers by now have also adapted to leveraging tactics and giving resources to help businesses be successful in the pandemic. So that's probably one of the most powerful ones that I'd recommend. And then lastly, just any entrepreneur group. I mean, again, just networking, continuing to network. I believe in professional networking, and I also believe in networking that's kind of just true to who you are. So just, looking for organizations and people that you genuinely connect with and thrive with. But for someone brand new, you cannot go wrong with a chamber. And then I will also actually offer SCORE. So SCORE is a division of the SBA, and it offers free mentoring. And actually, I interacted with 2 SCORE mentors before I opened my shop. Actually, one of them after the pandemic was like, I wouldn't do it if I were you. And I was like, well, thank you. Okay. And then he actually visited me about 2 months ago and he was like, good for you, kid. And I was like, well, thank you. So anyway, but SCORE is it's a network of retired executives, company executives that are also well networked. So hopefully that's helpful. I think that's definitely, you really want to surround yourself with people and groups and organizations and those people who are connected, because from the Rotary, the Chamber, SCORE, those were a lot of people. Those people actually meet at my coffee shop, and they're bringing people to my shop as well. So would definitely recommend those.
Awesome. So you mentioned some really great tips. I think those were really amazing tips. If you could think out of those 5
Mhm.
which one was by far the most challenging out of the 5?
Good question. Probably the adapt or die. I think I do think so. I mean, because it was really, I mean, seriously, I think I was doing an interview about 2 months ago, and that's kind of what she was asking me, like, hey, how did you feel about doing this during a pandemic? And I was like, yeah, I can't believe I did. Like, this is crazy. You know, pinch me now. But you know, as a business owner, you have to have a plan A through double Z. Always. You have to be ready to adapt. I mean, even just small things like Cisco telling me they're no longer selling the butter that I like. Like, you're constantly adapting. So, I mean, it's a muscle you want to build, you know, no matter what. But it's been the hardest because I think that as I mentioned, as a small business owner, this is emotional, especially when you look at my why. My why is emotional. And so, but I also believe in some instances, you know, business and emotion don't always mix. You got to have pragmatism along the way. And so it's the adaptability that you can kind of, it gets really human sometimes. It gets really in, you know, with business, I like to be in my pragmatic zone. But that's the piece that really throws me for a loop sometimes. And it's every day, all day. We have a question. As a new business owner, it may take a while to become financially profitable. Yep. What is a common time frame to plan a supplement? Good question. So 6 months to a year. So my accountant actually told me, I'm not technically, restaurants have way more overhead than a coffee shop, but I'm restaurant adjacent. And so restaurants usually take anywhere from 6 months up to a year to hit profit. And I actually hit profit in month 3. And so, which was amazing. Now, during the summer months were, as you can imagine, for coffee, you know, school's out, you know, things like that. So I had low summer months that were, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? But that, as you kind of asking here, I had that money saved up. So I was able to kind of, you know, dip in and kind of just support to support being below the run rates I'm supposed to be at for that time of year. And then once school got back in, being, you know, right up again. But definitely 6 to 12 months. And actually on that note, that's just business expenses. I would recommend that you have personal household expenses reserved as well. The commitment that I made to my husband, I don't know the timeline for me making my hard transition, but my commitment to my husband was that I wouldn't put any more on him from our household. I'm going to make sure I have my household contributions, you know, on lock on top of what my business needs. So you could argue it's technically a year of expenses. It's 6 months of your household and definitely 6 months to a year of your business. If you do go the route of an SBA loan, the banks actually will require, and they will verify it. They require that after your, you know, anywhere between 15 to 20% capital injection into your project, that you still have a year of personal on-hand expenses in your account. So making this up, if a year of expenses for you was $10,000, they would require that you minimally have that amount in your account, because they don't want you to drain all of your, you know, all of your funds and not have the ability, to your great question, Sharonda, they don't want you to not have the ability to do exactly what small business owners have to do, which is sometimes kind of dip in your personal to help your business in the initial months. Did you apply for PPP? No, I did not qualify given the timing and any of that. So there was actually something I looked into that I also didn't qualify for, unfortunately. So that was timing related.
I think we have 2 more questions. The one that we all want to know, because we're getting so much Black girl magic here, about the consultations. I'm sorry, I can't get that word out. Consultations. Do you offer that to any women who may be interested, maybe going into the franchising world?
Oh my gosh, yes, actually, absolutely. So I have a digital course out on my site. Actually, let me see. I didn't go to this page. I have this here for you guys. I actually have a course out called So You Want to Open a Franchise. And this is here. And so I got so many questions. I get asked about this like 2 and 3 times a week. And I also do franchise consulting. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't touch enough of you. Like I can't reach enough of you. So I actually created a course called So You Want to Open a Franchise. It's located on my 820enterprises.com. And it's underneath my new brand, Protegator Pro, as well. So you can find it on either site. But if you are looking for, I'm actually doing a consult tomorrow with a new client who's interested in franchising. So if you are wanting to have one-on-one time, I would say, you know, we can definitely definitely do that. And you can book on my site as well, 820 Enterprises, under my consulting page. And if you would like just more of a kind of overview of everything you need to know before franchise, kind of entering into franchising, my course is available to you too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And the last question that was posed is the slide deck. I think it's so much valuable information here that we want to preserve. Will you be sharing that slide deck with the organization?
Sure. Oh, sure. You like me to send you the deck?
I believe either Madam Chair or a co-chair will get that information from you. We were just, wanting to know if it was okay for us to have a copy.
Sure, of course. Oh, yeah, I made it for you. So good.
All right. Did any co-sisters have any additional questions? I don't see any others in the chat.
This was so fun. I hope
It was fun.
Enjoyed it.
Excellent presentation. All right. Well, we don't have any additional questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to my co-sister Cadwell. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, ladies.
So, Brittany, we would just like to take the opportunity to thank you so very much for your presentation tonight. Your tips were outstanding. I really enjoyed your last tip of know your why and always remember your why. That's something that I tell my daughter, I tell my kids all the time. Listen, you have to know why you're doing this, right? Always remember your why, whether it's an organization, it's a sports team, whatever you decide to do in life, you have to always remember why you want to do that. So I think that's very important. In your other tips, number one, adapt or die. Like I wrote that down, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, beside it, along with like doing your research, making sure you go digital, your SWOT analysis. I think so many times when we see, the great resignation, like so many people are resigning. They're deciding that, this is not what I want to do every day. I don't want to get up every day and work for someone else when I can work for myself. And they jump into everything, head first, sometimes feet first, and they don't really understand all of the mechanics that go into, owning your own business. So I think your survival tips were outstanding. We will record this and we will have it up on our Facebook page for anyone to review. We want to thank our president in her absence, Sonia Irby, for leading this wonderful group of women. Retta Washington McCoy, she is here. She had to leave earlier. She is our first vice president, but we want to thank her. She oversees the Sister Nomics Committee. We want to thank our chair, Kimberly Thomas Grant. She keeps us in line here on the committee. We want to say thank you to all of our sisters on the Sister Nomics Committee. One thing that I really enjoy about this committee is that we are always stressing the importance of equality. When you see Black women, just financial freedom and financial equality. And we want to thank all of our guests tonight for joining us for this presentation. You can learn more about Brittany on her website if you are interested in, franchising or just stepping out on that faith of becoming an entrepreneur. Brittany is there to help you. She's like, yeah, I got you.
I got you.
So she is there to help. Or if you are a current entrepreneur, right? And you have some questions or you learned some things tonight that you would like more information on, I believe Brittany will be more than happy to help you and to walk you through some things that you may have not thought about as an entrepreneur. So again, we just want to thank everyone. We want to remind everyone to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter. We are everywhere. The National Coalition of Black Women, Dallas chapter. Please follow us. We have another event on Saturday at 11 o'clock a.m. We will conclude this series on Saturday at 11 a.m. It will be virtual as well. You will see that on our Twitter feed as well as on our Facebook pages. So we invite you to come back and to join us. And at this time, I believe we are going to say good night. I was getting ready to say sorry, Grant. I'm so sorry. Co-sister Grant, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you so much, Coalition Sister Cotwell. I'm sorry, I almost did it too. Thank you, Brittany, for everything. I did send you over my email so that I could get the presentation out to all of our attendees that are here on tonight, as well as our first VP and our president. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We look forward to seeing you at PJ's Coffee. We're going to have a little meeting date over there soon. We just got to work out the calendar date, but we will be there. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Have a great evening.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
You too. Good night.